This week's episodes are sponsored by Unscripted Roasters, a black, veteran, and woman-owned coffee bean roasting company. For more information, please go to Instagram.com/unscriptedbarista. And now, time for the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Patreon.com/allournonsense. Of course, it is your friend Derek here, back with a twist on one of my favorite series that I present here, Introspective. This is a film version of Introspective. It's something I'm gonna delve into a bit more going forward. This is one of my favorite films. Came out when I was a kid. Of course, we are talking today about New Jack City. If you're listening to this on the free feeds for other episodes of Introspective, you do have to subscribe to the Patreon for that. Patreon.com/allournonsense. You have to subscribe to get these further episodes. This is one I'm giving away to everybody. This will appear, of course, on Patreon, first access, then the free feeds, Apple, Spotify, Pandora, etc., as well as my YouTube channel as a free episode. But any subsequent episodes that take place after this will be exclusive to Patreon. I want to thank Unscripted Baristas, aka Unscripted Roasters, for being the official sponsor of Introspective, as well as our new show, The Rewatch. For more information, of course, that was at the top of the show in the introduction. Anyway, today, getting to our topic at hand, New Jack City. This is one of my favorite fucking films. I don't know any other way to say it other than that. I'm probably going to say fuck a lot during this episode, so if you don't want to hear that, you should probably turn this off right now. But if you know somebody who's really into this film, you should refer them to this episode, because again, New Jack City is absolutely fucking phenomenal. This film made stars of a lot of people. A lot of people don't realize, a lot of people who watch Law and Order, and I'm not a fan, but if you are, it is what it is. Everybody looks at Ice-T as, oh, that's the cop from Law and Order, or whatever role he plays in there. People don't realize Ice-T used to be a pimp, he used to be a rapper, and, you know, this was his first acting role, so this is really, really big. And then he went on to have this exceptional career. He's still doing it to this day. But, you know, those of us who are in the know, we know him for 6 in the Morning is still one of the dopest songs I've ever heard. So many people have done covers over it. And Ice-T just kind of, he is as raw and gritty as it gets. For his role as Scotty Appleton here in New Jack City, I think he's second to none. Wesley Snipes has top billing as Nino Brown, but I believe that you have to put Ice-T right there with him. I watched a mini documentary about the film, and they talked about how Wesley Snipes came. Like, they were all just like, oh yeah, this is cool, whatever, we're here to work. Wesley Snipes came in with this very vetted way of doing things, and almost as if he was a stage actor, you know, professionally trained. Not saying that he wasn't, but it's like when you see the character of Nino Brown, you don't think diligent, accomplished actor, and that's what they say Wesley Snipes brought to that set when he came on. So, New Jack City is just, it's really one of those films, and I hate to say it, you know, like we talk about hood movies and slave movies and stuff like that. It just, you know, being a black person, this is kind of what you see when you grow up. And it's not that it's bad cinema, of course. It opens the eyes to a lot of people of what goes on in urban neighborhoods and things like that. John Singleton gave the rest of the world a view on South Central Los Angeles, right? He showed us why people were scared to go to Compton and what Crenshaw was. Well before, you know, we'd already heard NWA talk about what it was like to be from Compton. John Singleton then gave us a visual of that with Boys in the Hood. And it's probably one of the, you know, most famous of the so-called urban hood movies. And then you have Menace to Society, another one that kind of continues that trend by the Hughes brothers. The Hughes brothers also did Dead Presidents, which gives us a view of what it was like in the late 60s, early 70s for guys who were coming back from Vietnam and couldn't find work, and then they had to turn to other means and, you know, eventually robbing basically a Brinks truck, I guess, if you know, for all intents and purposes. menace to society, growing up in the '90s in the hood, selling drugs, stuff like that. Um, a lot of directors, black directors in particular, don't get the credit they deserve. I tweeted out a couple of weeks ago that Rusty Cundiff doesn't get the credit he deserves, and he actually retweeted it. So shout out to Rusty. But for his films, specifically Tales from the Hood, you know, that's just there's elements in there that you could say Tarantino borrowed. You know what I mean? So um, I wanted to shed light on black filmmakers and black film, but not just because New Jack City is one of those films. New Jack City is an awesome film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. And I just could not, I'm just like, this is, it's so important to me that I absolutely had to talk about it. So, without further ado, I bring to you New Jack City, and I'm reciting from Wikipedia as well as the IMDb page for this film. New Jack City is a 1991 American action crime film based upon an original story and screenplay by Thomas Lee Wright and Barry Michael Cooper, and directed by Mario Van Peebles. This is the latter's directorial debut, and Van Peebles also co-stars in the film. The film stars Wesley Snipes, Ice-T, Alan Payne, Chris Rock, Mario Van Peebles, Judd Nelson, and Bill Cobbs. The film was released in the United States on March 8th of 1991. I was in the third grade when this movie came out, and I remember being in Boy Scouts, and one Sunday morning, like, I was young. I probably didn't see the movie for 2 years later, and my mother didn't show it to me. Somebody else did. And but I remember these kids in my scout troop, like, you gotta see Boys in the Hood, man. Keisha was so hard. Keisha was the best one in the movie. And I think he might have been about 10. He was a couple years older than me, and I'm like, your parents let you watch that shit? There's no fucking way. And I saw it like 2 years later at about the age of 10. Also, Bill Nunn, great role. There's a lot of great talent in this film. I want you to say that. Wesley Snipes plays Nino Brown, a rising drug lord in New York City during the crack epidemic. Ice-T plays Scotty Appleton, a detective who vows to stop Nino's criminal activity by going undercover to work for Nino's gang. The story begins in Harlem of 1986. Harlem is basically Harlem is the center of culture. And the reason I say that is this. And if you're not black and you get upset at me saying this, then fuck it, so be it. I really don't care. Black people are culture. We just are. We are responsible for the latest dances, the latest trends in fashion, the latest slang. What we've done for music cannot be understated. We set culture, and that generally comes out of Harlem. The drug trade, heroin, crack, all that stuff came out of like cocaine came. If you watch the movie Blow, it kind of tells you a good version of how cocaine came to the United States in the 70s and early 80s and stuff like that. But the rest of the stuff, like the Harlem Renaissance, is important because there were all these black creators and entertainers, and they were getting light. What they don't really tell you about that was, I'm not going to sit here and say Langston Hughes was doing heroin. I don't know that to be exact, but I have heard things like that a lot of those people within Harlem were engaging in drug activity and stuff like that. Most famous we've seen is the movie Ray, which is the biopic about Ray Charles, where it stars Jamie Foxx. Heroin, and I'm not saying he got introduced there. He got introduced on the road or whatever. However close it is to the actual story, I'm not sure. But a lot of drug usage, and it was viewed as cool. It was viewed as the thing to do, So that stuff came from Harlem. Again, Harlem is the center of culture, and that's just the way it is. Like, the joke was made that everybody's like, Barack Obama's not the first black president; it's Bill Clinton. And I forgot who made the joke. They were like, he plays a saxophone, he cheats on his wife, which is a shitty thing to say. He smokes weed, and then after he left the White House, he fucking moved to Harlem, right? So, yeah, Harlem, it's the center of culture for the United States and for the rest of the world. So anyway, the story begins in Harlem, 1986, and Nino Brown and his gang, the Cash Money Brothers, C&B. The influence that this film has on things in later culture, look at it this way. Cash Money Records, they would go by CMB, Cash Money Billionaires. That really came from Cash Money Brothers from this film, YMCMB, and so on and so forth. That all traces its roots back to New Jack City. CMB became the dominant drug ring in New York City once crack cocaine is introduced to the streets. His gang consists of his best friend G Money, Gerald G Money Williams, Enforcer the Dutta Man, Gun Mole Keisha, Nino's girlfriend Selena, and her tech-savvy cousin Kareem, who's played by Christopher Williams, who was an R&B artist at the time. Nino converts the Carter apartment complex into a crack house. G-Money and Keisha kill rival Fat Smitty. The CMB throws out the tenants, and Nino forces the landlord out onto the streets naked. Meanwhile, undercover detective Scotty Appleton attempts to make a deal with a stick-up kid, Pookie, who was famously played by Chris Rock. But Pookie runs off with the money. Appleton chases Pookie and shoots him in the leg, but the police let him go. Nino's gang successfully run the streets of Harlem over the next 3 years. Going back to the Carter. For them to do this, to take over a whole fucking apartment complex in New York in broad daylight and turn it into not a crack house, a fucking crack factory. This was the most well-run crack business I think any of us have ever seen. They had a place set up where purchases were made, where the product was made, and then where people could go to enjoy their drugs if they didn't want to take them home. As far as the Carter, again, as I've stated, this film influences a lot. You can look no further than Mr. Dwayne Michael Carter Jr., a.k.a. Lil Wayne. 3 of his albums, he has a series named The Carter. There's The Carter 2, The Carter 3, The Carter 4, and most recently, after long delays, The Carter 5. The first Carter in the series actually kind of touches on this, where there's the intro, there's the middle portion, and then there's the ending where he's like, welcome to the Carter, it's my building, let me show you around. And the first thing that comes to your mind is the Carter in New York City. It's even the album cover. There's Wayne and there's a backdrop. I lost my train of thought. Wayne's last name is Carter, so it was very fitting. It made sense. And Wayne is a student of hip hop. Hip hop, of course, comes from New York City. Now, hip hop originated in the Bronx. Another very prominent Carter in hip hop is Jay-Z, aka Sean Carter. So Wayne was always paying attention to what was going on elsewhere in the world, and that's why he was so good at what he does. He's gotten older, and it's not exactly the same, but Wayne is also is just very fucking talented, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give him his flowers because he greatly deserves them. But yeah, his Carter album series is directly influenced by this film. Again, we are culture. When Detective Stone comes under pressure, Appleton volunteers to infiltrate Nino's gang and is partnered with loose cannon Nick Peretti, played by Judd Nelson, very famously of the Brat Pack. If you remember those movies in the 80s, John Hughes films and such, Judd Nelson played the role of John Bender in The Breakfast Club, which has been done so many other places. There is a Dawson's Creek episode where they do a Breakfast Club type of thing. There's a Degrassi episode where Drake and Andrea Lewis and all those other people do a Breakfast Club type of thing. Somebody else did the Breakfast Club as well. I can't remember, but Judd Nelson, obviously, the Breakfast Club. Also, St. Elmo's Fire. I thought his role in St. Elmo's Fire was brilliantly done. But Judd Nelson is a star. He is the only principal white actor in this film, and he holds his own next to Ice-T and the other members. I think he did a phenomenal fucking job as well, so hats off to Judd Nelson. Appleton volunteers to infiltrate Nino's gang and is partnered with loose cannon Nick Peretti. Elsewhere, mobster Frankie Needles attempts to collect taxes from Nino, who refuses to pay. You name me one time where a guy felt like he started to accumulate more money, which in turn offers you more power, and a guy felt like he was above the law and above everyone else, he or she, within their field of expertise, and when they get certain power, they just don't want to pay on any back taxes or anything they may owe. A lot of stars, you hear about them having tax situations where they owe the government because they didn't pay taxes. One thing you also hear about is them being in debt before they had a substantial amount of money, and then those debt collectors will come to collect at a later date. At this point, you can't tell me you don't have the money because we see you on television, and we know that even if the jewelry's fake and the cars are rented for the videos, this, that, and the third, you have some sort of substantial income, and now I want what's owed to me. This situation is a bit different. While Appleton and Peretti spy on Nino and his gang as they hand out Thanksgiving turkeys to the poor, Appleton spots Pookie, now a crack addict, as the man beats his junkie girlfriend. Instead of arresting him, Appleton gets Pookie in rehab. You never kind of have ever seen this in another film where they took a crackhead or any other kind of drug addict and put them into rehab. And even after Pookie gets out of rehab, Scotty takes him to his home. He feeds him. He helps him work out and stuff like that and gain his strength. Chris Rock, masterful in the role of Pookie. Even during one of his stand-ups for HBO, he's like, I'm 45, and people started clapping. He's like, yeah, New Jack City was a long fucking time ago. Chris Rock was very new and very unheard of. Nobody in this cast, honestly, the only person that came to this film with any kind of real clout would have to be Judd Nelson. Now, Wesley Snipes, we did see in, remember, Thriller is shot like a short film. Bad is also the same way, and you see much of it in the straight to VHS or Betamax or Laserdisc, whatever you watched it on, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Wesley Snipes is like the guy in the neighborhood who's asking Michael, like, are you going to be down, or are you going to still go to this stupid bullshit, little prep school you're going to? You forget about where you come from and stuff. Like, Wesley Snipes was there, but I can't remember anything else other than Major League, which is one of my favorite movies. And it was really weird that he wasn't in the sequel. They went with Omar Epps for the sequel. I don't know why. But anyway, so Wesley had acting credits to his name. So I would say maybe him and Judd Nelson, because again, Judd Nelson, part of the Brat Pack, those films in the 80s, those two were known. Chris Rock was virtually an unknown unless you watched Saturday Night Live. Those late 80s, early 90s cast, Chris Rock, David Spade, Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, Kevin Nealon, Tim Meadows, Will Ferrell, like, they just had a run on SNL where they had all these talented, great fucking actors. And Chris Rock is from that group. You had guys like Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase. A lot of great talent went through SNL first. So Chris Rock happens to be one of those people. And other than this, I think Boomerang's either 90 or 91 or 92, so it's around the same time. We're starting to get to know him, but the comedian that is Chris Rock, that sells out shows worldwide and does these great, grandiose HBO specials, this is not Chris Rock at that point. This is a very, very young Chris Rock with really shitty teeth. Like, if you look at Chris Rock now, great teeth, because he lives next door to a dentist and he has the money to get the stuff done, but back then, his teeth look like shit. So, we're seeing everybody basically almost at the infancy of their career, aside from Judd Nelson and Wesley Snipes. Alan Payne, this is before Jason's Lyric and before House of Pain and stuff like that, well before any of that. So this is, for Alan Payne, this is kind of his big break as well. So this film is really groundbreaking to me, and that's why I chose to talk about it. That's why it's the topic. But anyway, Scotty gets Pookie into rehab. Later, Pookie offers to help him bring down Nino. While they were passing out the Thanksgiving turkeys, Pookie had a conversation with Nino. He's like, Pookie, like, shit is crazy. Like, clean yourself up. Maybe I'll give you a job. Which is probably the wrong thing to do to someone who you sold crack to. You don't want to bring a crackhead into your business, because even if he hadn't been working with the police, which I'll get to in a second, he's a liability because there's product right there. He's probably going to smoke more than he's going to get in the bags for distribution. So that was a bad idea in my opinion. Against his better judgment and the disapproval of Stone and Peretti, Appleton recruits Pookie as an informant in the Carter. Of course, as I just stated, you have an addict around that much stuff, you're going to have problems. Pookie relapses. G-Money realizes that he's wired, and he orders the Carter destroyed. The cops find Pookie's bloody corpse, but it is booby-trapped. Peretti defuses the explosive seconds before it explodes. Angry, Nino warns G-Money not to make such a costly mistake again. And then, this is, again, I'm reading from Wikipedia. Now, the way that they're just like, he warns G-Money not to make such a costly mistake again. That is one of the most epic fucking scenes. G-Money calls Nino. Nino was in bed with G-Money, who he thought was his girl. I'll say that, because clearly she had other ideas. Like a lot of women in films like this, and there are some women and men out there, that are addicted to power, because power brings money and fame and everything that you could ever imagine. What the Carter was bringing in, I think it was $1 million a week, Nino says in the following scene. $1 million a week, if you're on the arm of the man or woman who's making that, you can have whatever the fuck you want, especially in 1991. At $1 million a week, at 52 weeks in a year, and this is 1991, had Nino Brown pocketed all that cash and kept it aside, he could have easily bought his way into a Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, or NHL franchise. Easily, because they weren't valued as much now because the TV contracts has increased the revenue for these, organizations. But back then, he could have easily bought his way into one of those. With that kind of money, even though he sold drugs, Nino could have bought his way into golf outings with, the Brofmans and people that work on Wall Street and stuff like that. People will say all the time, oh, black and white doesn't matter. That's bullshit. It 100% does matter. The only color in this world that matters more than black, white, yellow, purple, green, or anything is the color green. Money will afford you a lot of things that your skin color, even if you're white, because poor white trash is a term for a reason. Let's understand that. But if you're poor white trash and you happen to come upon millions upon billions of dollars, it's going to open a lot of doors for you. There's literally a classic television show based on this, the Beverly Hillbillies. The guy's fucking oil sprouted up on his property. He becomes a millionaire, and they end up in Beverly Hills, right? So, at $1 million a week, that's a lot of fucking money. If they really were making that, and we're talking 52 weeks in a year, Nino Brown was a millionaire. And everybody at the table around him was very wealthy as well. And these are all young black men and women. Even though this is a shitty situation and we're damaging the community, we're also kind of empowering the community. Make no mistake about it. Rich Porter was killed a year before this film debuted. I think Rich Porter was killed in January of 1990. Rich Porter sold drugs along with AZ and Alpo. And he was killed by Alpo, and Alpo went on credit. And then Alpo also turned witness to get a lesser sentence and get out and try to get back in the drug trade. But even aside from that, Rich Porter was killed in, we'll say, January of 1990. I believe it was January. They still celebrate Rich Porter's birthday in Harlem every year as if he's still alive. He sold drugs to the community, but that also put a lot of money in the community. Not in the best way, but it's a thing, right? I need you guys to understand that. I'm not advocating for drug use or drug sales or anything like that. I'm not advocating for anybody to do that. I'm just simply stating, when you're a dope boy, like somebody was like, why do you like this film? I'm like, you have to understand where we come from. Dope boys are superstars. They got the Jordans first. They got the cutest girls in the hood. They got the best cars. They always got the new music. Best stereo in their car, so they're riding around bumping the new shit, and then that's how you find out. That's when I go back to saying we are culture. It starts from there. Nobody really needs rims on their car, but the shit looked fly, so people started doing it. So again, not to get off on a tangent, so Nino is sleeping with this girl who G Money thought for all intents and purposes was his girl. He even said, G Money, I like this girl of yours. And she said, he ain't got no leash or papers on me. To that, Nino's girlfriend says, well, you know when a dog don't have leashes or a leash. And she's like, what? It runs around the neighborhood and tries to fuck everything. So Nino's girl saw it from day one like, yo, this bitch has ideas. She's trying to take what's mine. I helped him. They don't talk enough about, Selena's role because Nino was just a kid from Harlem. He didn't know much. He didn't know about banks. Selena brought her cousin in and set up they had computer terminals in the Carter. They literally had a fucking call center without phones. They had records and Excel sheets. Well, not Excel, but early days of spreadsheets and stuff like that. He literally had financial records. Most drug dealers can count what's in their pocket and what they have in a shoebox, and if they have a bank account somewhere, that. What Nino did was revolutionary. So the Carter gets taken down. G Money calls Nino to tell him, and the girl that he thought was his girl is in bed with Nino. And he's like, I knew you ain't nothing but a high-priced hoe. Put Nino on the phone. And he has to tell him that they had to shut down operations at the Carter because of the police. So when they say Nino he warns G Money not to make a costly mistake again. He chastised him and he emasculated him in front of everybody within their initial crew. One of the best scenes in the film, and it's again, I talked about how the Breakfast Club has been done in other media. This has as well. There's a very hilarious, like damn near every episode of Martin was absolutely hilarious. There's one where Martin buys a CD player and it comes up missing, and he thinks that he doesn't know who of his friends has taken it or misplaced it or whatever. Martin stages a get together with his friends and tells them all to dress in black, the same way Nino did here. Nino has a Rottweiler with him when he walks in the room for this meeting. Martin has a stuffed Rottweiler. Nino tells G Money, sit your $5 ass down before I make change. Martin says to Cole, sit your $5 ass down before I make change. Now, Karl Anthony Payne, phenomenal actor, great guy. Of course, Cockroach on The Cosby Show. Cole on Martin. Karl Payne is still married to Bobby Brown's first baby mama to this day, since like the 80s. Karl Payne is also a legend in black comedy, and he's one of those great actors that we have that doesn't get enough credit. So I want to definitely make sure Karl Payne gets his roses. But to that, Cole said to Martin, Cole sit your $5 ass down before I make change, and Cole was like, anybody got change? Like, he didn't take the severity of it. But this scene in the film it's dark. It's the room is dark. There are no light. Like, there's very minimal lighting, just enough that they can all see each other's faces. And Nino says $1 million a week fucking business reduced to rubbish. And like, how they infiltrate. And he's like, nobody knows anything. And he like releases the dog from the leash and he starts jumping rope with the leash. He's got a cane. And he says, oh, I bet G Money knows how they infiltrated. And then he comes up to him and he gets him behind him, kind of choking him a little bit from the back. And he's like, it ain't my fault. I didn't da. Maybe if you were, and Nino cuts him off. Maybe if I was what? G Money was going to say, maybe if you were paying attention to things and not fucking around with my girl, maybe you'd have known what was going on around there. And then G Money says, I got 1 million people under me. I can't watch everybody at all times. It was Kareem that brought him to my attention anyway. And Nino, this cane that we think is just a simple cane, he pulls a blade out of it like he's the fucking Penguin. And this is Batman in the 60s, and the Penguin has an umbrella with a machine gun, and he's got the one with the blade. And then Nino proceeds to stab Kareem through the fucking hand. And then says, I never liked you anyway, you pretty motherfucker. Now, the crazy part is Kareem stuck around after this. He said in the beginning, when they're in the club, Nino says to him, you must like slumming, Kareem. And he says, guy like you working at a high-priced bank downtown, and yet here you are in the slums with us. He's like, it's the difference in them paying me $800 a week versus you paying me $8,000 a week. Now, $800 a week, especially in 1990, that's a lot of money. If you're here in the Midwest. In New York, yeah, I don't know. Because what we pay, like, for, like, 3-bedroom apartments and whatnot down here and multiple bathrooms, that pays for a studio apartment in New York. And it's not going to be a nice studio. It's going to be a piece of shit. Oh, open floor plan. No, they just don't have any fucking walls. You living in an old fucking tenement, honestly. But it's New York. You're paying for the zip code. The first, second, and third rule of real estate, location, location, location. You're just paying to say that you live in New York. So, if somebody was paying me $8,000 a week, but they stabbed me in the fucking hand, I don't know if I'm sticking around for that. Credit to Kareem, I guess, and Kareem also plays a very big role. There's more for him later on as we go through the film, but I'll get to that in a second. Kareem was actually there when Scotty shot Pookie in the ankle, and that's why him being there, you only see him for a second, but later on in the film, it gives it levity because he reveals something that I'm going to get to later on. But anyway, Kareem's standing there bleeding. Nino takes out the blade. He then proceeds to wipe the blood on G Money's turtleneck. And he was like, G, this ain't like you. Let some shit like who I'm laying the pipe to come between us. Which is crazy. I don't remember if Selena was in the room or not. I actually have to go back and watch now that I think about it. And he's like, get it together. And he, G Money tries to apologize. And Nino's like, now leave me. And then G Money tries again. He's like, I said get the fuck out. And then everybody clears the room. So now he's sitting on all this money, but you had to blow all your product. You had to burn down your location. You got to figure out what you're going to do from this point on. And make no mistake about it, the police know what Nino's doing. They know where he's operating. You can't take over an apartment building and use it as a drug warehouse and nobody be aware. So after Pookie's funeral and no longer needed by Stone, Appleton and Peretti go undercover as drug dealers. And they grab Frankie Needles, who was the Italian connect that was basically supplying Nino and the CMB with their cocaine. With the thing about the Italians is this: they weren't prepared for drugs to go the way that they did when crack was introduced. Nobody was prepared for that. It's just nobody was prepared. Like, the U.S. was not prepared. The inner cities were not prepared. The crack epidemic coinciding with the Reagan era and Reaganomics was detrimental for the United States of America. And not just for the country, but it was detrimental for urban neighborhoods, the inner city, black people in general. Everybody, almost everybody, I don't say that, mostly every black person you know knows somebody that's directly affected by the drug use and what it did to the community in the 80s. Lost somebody that I have, I've been very outspoken about it before. I've had members of my family who were addicted to crack cocaine on both sides of my family. And I saw what it did to people. And I saw what it did to the inner city. Driving through. And now gentrification is the big thing. I see these neighborhoods like... I was in an area driving around with somebody here in St. Louis, and they're like, oh, this is where I hang out. And they were white, and they're like, yeah, this is where I hang out. This is where I party. It's cool, it's cool, it's cool. And I'm like, yo, when I was a kid, people used to sell crack on this corner. And they're like, nuh-uh. I'm like, yeah. Like, people sold rock right here on this corner. So I was able to see that stuff firsthand. But it really did destroy the community. And for a while, and still today, black people are looked at as a certain way, like they're animals for putting that in their bodies. But there are white people who are addicted to crack as well. Cocaine is viewed as a rich man's drug. But crack is a poor drug, right? You don't really hear a lot about too many white crackheads. You hear about them being on meth. But they relegate that. They're like, oh, that only exists in the trailer parks and stuff like that. There are people who live in high-rise apartments and penthouses that have done meth. That's the secret that they really don't want to get out. But it happens. So, the Italians were the go-between for Nino and the CMB. And this is the thing. People don't realize Ice Cube, the character of Ice Cube in Straight Outta Compton said this in the film. All they talk about is the crack epidemic and this, that, and the third. Black people don't have passports. We don't have boats and planes. How did the drugs get in the country? We don't have passports, so how did we get Russian assault rifles? And that's true. I don't know if Ice Cube really said that. It was a part in a scene in the movie Straight Outta Compton. But it's 100% true. Most black people do not have a passport, nor do we own boats and planes to fly and float drugs and shit into the country. The Italians brought the stuff in. The mafia brought drugs, and they tried for the longest to keep it out of that, but it became such big business that eventually they had to get involved. But, yes, most drugs came to the U.S. by way of the Italians and the Italian mafia. And if I somehow end up dead after this, I'm just saying, never mind. Anyway, so Frankie Needles is the guy because he can get Peretti and Appleton a meeting with Nino. Frankie Needles does his job because he's been cut loose by Nino. He's been trying to get them to pay their taxes. Nino's brushed him off, and he's like, I own this shit. This is my city. I own this. Fuck, like he even said, fuck you, Squingili eating motherfuckers. I don't know what Squingili is, or even it's a real thing, but it's really funny when Nino says it. He says, fuck those spaghetti eating bastards and shit like that. He's very dismissive of the Italians because the amount of money that he's accumulated has afforded him arrogancy. That's another thing. People, again, Money and your financial situation drastically changing affords you a lot of things that you could not do before. There was no way Nino, as a street hustler on the corner, could have said fuck the Italians. He'd have got his, we all know how that ends, right? We've all seen The Godfather, Goodfellas, Casino, and all that. We know how that story ends. But Nino has professional and personal bodyguards because he has the amount of wealth that a black man could only dream of by being an entertainer or an athlete, right? Biggie said it. There's only two ways out the hood: sling crack rock, or you got a wicked jump shot, right? So this is living proof of it. Proof. I'm sorry. So after bribing Frankie Needles, Appleton infiltrates the CMB, due in part to G Money's increasing ambition and drug use. G Money has been smoking crack, and also the thing about G Money, he's a conduit to the fall of Nino Brown for two reasons: drugs, and number two, Nino forgot that they were a unit. It was CMB. It wasn't Nino in the CMB, right? Like, if you watch the Temptations film series, all us black people have seen it. It was on NBC, and you can find it. You do an internet search, and you can definitely find it somewhere. David Ruffin says, "I'm not going on unless we go on as David Ruffin and the Temptations, Martha and the Vandellas, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes." Diana Ross famously once said Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. It was not so, like, it makes one person bigger than the group. It was Cash Money Brothers. It wasn't Nino and the Cash Money Brothers, but Nino forgot that. And that's his downfall. He's responsible for his own downfall because of the way he treated G Money. On the way up, before we had this money, we were thick as thieves. We were brothers. We were best friends, but literally we called each other brothers. And then when the money started coming in, it was all you, and nobody else is responsible for the success other than you. So, yeah, Appleton infiltrates the CMB, due in part to G Money's increasing ambition and drug use. Though Nino distrusts him, he agrees to do business. After relating an anecdote about his own violent initiation to a gang, Nino warns that he will kill both Appleton and G Money if there are any problems. So this is the most interesting part of the film because, again, this gives levity on things that will transpire in the future toward the end of the film. Nino tells Scotty a story. They're on the rooftop. He tells him, I had to get I wanted to join this gang called the LA Boys. Scotty, of course, Lenox Ave Boys. If you know anything about Harlem, Lenox Ave is the fucking place to be, right? So he asks, Nino's like, well, what do I got to do? And they're like, you got to smoke somebody. He's like, cool. He's like, no, not that easy. Can't be a rival crew or nothing like that. Got to be ordinary Mo. He says ordinary Mo. Just regular old person walking down the street minding their own business. Nino goes and gets some angel dust, gets high as shit, walks up to some lady, blows her brains out. He's like, I didn't even stay to watch the body fall. Ran away. That woman, if you remember back in the beginning of the movie, Scotty says to Pookie, when he's, Pookie's like, put me in there, I can get the job done. And he's like, you owe a lot of people, Pook. You owe me. You owe yourself. You owe my mother. And he's like, your mother. And we're all like, why the fuck does he owe his mother? He's like, yeah, little crackhead motherfucker like yourself killed my mom. Didn't take any jewelry, didn't take any money, just killed her. This brings us back to this conversation with Nino Brown. Nino Brown was the one that killed Scotty Appleton's mother. Now, Scotty kept his cool and filed that information away for later. His face didn't change or anything like that. That's a really good detective. That's a really good undercover officer, because if my mother had been killed when I was younger and this person tells me that, without telling me my mother's name, but I know you killed my mother, I don't know if I can keep my cool, and it's only us two up here. Fuck putting you in jail. I'm going to take you out myself. So again, that's a credit to Scotty Appleton, but that's a credit to Ice-T as an actor. Now, of course, he knew the lines. He knew that line was coming, so him as an actor can prepare himself. If we're suspending the fact that this is a film, and let's say this is real life, how do you keep yourself, from not your facial expressions change or anything like that? That's how big this Nino Brown situation was. They wanted him at all costs. So, he talks to him, and before, actually, the introduction is very interesting because early in the film, G Money is on the court shooting baskets for money, right? Everybody's betting whether he's gonna make it or miss it. They put their money up. G Money drains the shit, makes all his money. Nino and the Dutta Man pull up, and G Money jumps in the Jeep, and he's like, "Yeah, remember when we used to play ball when we were kids?" He's like, "Yeah, we played for Reverend Oates, and you were 13, I was 11. We were the best backcourt in the city." He's like, "Yeah, we weren't making any money then. Now we're making money. Y'all here living your fucking Michael Jordan fantasies. Business must be good." So Nino basically chastises G Money for being in the park shooting hoops, and then the introduction to Appleton, or at that time he would have been going under the moniker of Mr. Washington. That was his undercover character. Happens on the basketball court. Nino and G Money are playing one-on-one. They're in slacks and Stacey Adams with their shirts off playing one-on-one. Washington walks up on the court, and of course the CMB, the Dutta Man, Keisha, they're not having it. And Nino's like, "Yeah, I know." He's like, "G Money, pat him down." And he's like, "I know you're supposed to be the new connect, but you interrupted my basketball game. You interrupted my basketball game, so get the fuck out of here." And he's like, "G Money, you walk him down the block, and if he even blinks wrong, you lullaby his ass." In the film, they call it lullabying, putting somebody to sleep, aka killing them. Keisha kills somebody and says "rockabye baby" after she kills them. G Money gives this little speech. He's like, that's how you kill somebody. You roll up on them in broad daylight and blow his fucking brains out on the pavement. And then Keisha says "rockabye baby." So the funny thing is, where I said levity, there's always levity at the beginning of the film. We don't catch it till later on. When G Money's escorting him off the court, Kareem says to Keisha, "Yo, Keish, I seen that boy somewhere before." Remember, Kareem was there when Scotty shot Pookie and announced, "I'm a cop, everybody get the fuck back." So again, Appleton has gained Nino's trust when he reveals information about G Money's side deal, and then also saves Nino from being killed by an old man who, like I said, you can't take over a whole fucking apartment complex and nobody know it. This old man went to the police station and says, "How do you take over an entire apartment complex in broad daylight?" He's like, "If you lived in the Carter, I bet there would have been cops there, from day one." Again, this comes back. It's like, you can't do that. Only in a black or Latin neighborhood. That would have never flown in a Jewish neighborhood. I don't even know if you can pull that off in an Asian neighborhood. And again, this is not a race war. I'm telling you, this is what it's like when you live in the inner city. And I have no, just me being a black man doesn't mean I don't hate Jewish people. I don't hate Asian people. I don't hate white people. I don't hate anybody. I love everybody. The only people I do not have an affinity for are bigots. If you're an advocate for bigotry, I want nothing to do with you. I don't care who you love, what color you are, or anything like that. I can kick it with you at any fucking time. Just don't be a fucking bigot. That's all I ask. Don't be a Cubs fan either, or a Clippers fan. That's really a no-no. Or a Red Sox fan. That's a joke. That's a joke. I'm sorry. But anyway, Scotty gets to drop on this old man, and he's like, "Yo, good looking earlier. G Money slipping. He should have caught that." And then Scotty tells him, "Well, here's something you might not find funny. Your man G Money tried to cut a side deal with me." So now Nino's antennas are up on G Money as well. So as Nino's hanging out with Scotty, they go to this wedding, and it looks like basically Nino paid for the wedding, and it's Reverend Oates, because the Reverend was there when Nino's passing out money to these kids, drug money, and that's why the old man came in. He was looking for his grandson, and he also saw the other kids, and he's like, "This is absolute bullshit." He's like, "You're an idolater. You're selling poison to your own people." In the church I grew up with, they call drug dealers sorcerers, because you're basically selling something that's going to alter your mind and alter things that you see, and they call it sorcery. But Reverend Oates is the Reverend. This is the basketball team that Nino and G Money played for when they were kids. It's Reverend Oates' daughter that's getting married. And it seems like Nino, they said that, he says, "Our very gracious host, Mr. Nino Brown." So it seems like Nino was paid for this fucking wedding. So while Nino and Appleton and the CMB are at the wedding, Peretti sneaks into Nino's mansion trying to collect evidence. Again, Nino is wrong. The Italians, remember that. So Don Armateo sends hitmen to assassinate Nino. The hitmen are disguised as the caterers for the wedding. They wait till all the guests leave after the reception, and there's still some people there, and they open fire. Um, Massive shootout jumps off. Nino uses a little girl as a body shield. Fortunately, the little girl does not get hit. Um, Scotty is sitting there covering Nino, and then while they're shooting, Keisha runs up to try to take them out. She gets shot. That's the end of Keisha in the movie. Scotty has an open shot to Nino, and he really wants to take it, but he doesn't. Um, they get back to Nino's mansion, and Selena is at her wit's end with Nino. It's just over, and she condemns him, for what he's done to the community. But the shitty part is, like, you had a hand in this. You were on the gravy train. I think Selena was fine until she noticed Nino's wandering eye, and Nino was fucking other girls. And the final nail in the coffin for their relationship was Nino using that little girl as a body shield. So we get to this scene, and she's like, I've seen you kill too many people, Nino, and she's crying. And he slams her down on the table and pours champagne all over her and says, cancel that bitch, I'll buy another one. Crazy. And that's another one of those lines that resonates with people, especially in the black community. We've heard that in songs. We've heard it so many places because New Jack City is just very fucking influential. So at this point, Nino is just like, number one, you got to retaliate. So he sends hitmen. I don't know if it was Nino on the bike or who it was, but there's a guy riding I think it's a Kawasaki Ninja, and there's a guy on the back with dual Uzis, and they ride down the block and they shoot Don Mateo and people from his crew right in front of this Italian restaurant that they basically frequent. So next thing you know, we see Stone, Appleton, and Peretti meet up with I think she's an assistant DA. She's some sort of district attorney, and he's like, I hope you know that that son of a bitch used a little girl as a body shield. And Appleton's like, I got no use for you two. Like, I don't even know why I'm talking to you. And he's like, they tell him basically, we got it set up that Nino will buy from us and we can get the whole damn thing on tape. So they set up the meeting. And Appleton shows up. Cash Money Brothers are already at the warehouse. Mr. Washington, a.k.a. Scotty Appleton, shows up with the product, ready to do the deal. He pulls out the briefcase. CMB draws guns on him. He's like, yo, I thought we were friends. And he's like, never personal. Nino says to him, it's never personal. It's always business. So Scotty kneels down. He's like, open the briefcase. Let me see the product. Scotty kneels down almost in the same fashion that he was kneeling down with his gun after he shot Pookie. And this, again, is where the film has, things that happen in the beginning create levity for the end. This is where Kareem says, yo, I knew I seen Washington somewhere, yo, he's 5-0. They're listening outside on wiretaps. The police are like, oh shit, his cover's blown. They bust into the warehouse, and then we have another gunfight. Peretti saves Scotty by killing the Dutta Man. Nino gets out of there. That night, Nino and G-Money on a roof. G-Money basically tells him, your ego ruined this whole thing. Nino tells him, it's your fault. Maybe it's this glass dick you've been sucking. He pulls out a crack pipe. He's like, Keisha's dead. The Dutta Man's dead. And he's like, G-Money's like, fuck all that shit. Let's just go back to it being me and you. We can do this. And he's like, we can't do that, G, because I'm on the run now. He's like, but the way we can make it, there's one way we can make it right. And he pushes G-Money, who falls to his knees. And then, their famous thing, am I my brother's keeper? And they always say, yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes. It's like a war cry for them. Nino's got a tear in his eye. G-Money's crying. He's, am I my brother's keeper? G-Money asks him, am I my brother's keeper? And Nino says, yes, I am. Tear drops down his face. Very cinematic life. And he pulls the trigger and shoots G-Money right there on the roof. The gang is done. Keisha's dead. The Duttleman's dead. Selena's gone. Here we are, right? This is it. So Nino's hiding out in an apartment. And Scotty is basically walking the streets of Harlem like, yo, any of y'all know where Nino Brown lives? And these kids are like, yeah, man, fuck you. Basically, like, me and my boys won this basketball tournament. Nino bought us all scooters, so I ain't telling you a motherfucking thing. And he's like, you know what? You look like a fucking cop anyway. And they take off running. They get a hand on one of the kids, and he's like, no, please don't shoot me. Don't hurt me. Don't harm me. He's like, I can tell you where Nino Brown lives. I hate that heartless bastard. He beat a kid up over like $5 or something. I can't remember exactly what he was. He was like, I hope you kill that heartless son of a bitch. So Scotty and Peretti bust through Nino's fucking window. He's got everything blacked out. He's in there watching TV with the girl that he took from G Money. And Scotty starts beating the shit out of Nino. Throws his ass through onto the fucking fire escape. Throws his ass down onto a pile of trash. Peretti's like, send him down here. He throws him down. Nino's beat the fuck up. He's basically slobbering blood all over himself. And Scotty tells him, like, you know, that fucking teacher you killed, that was my fucking mother. And he's like, yo, I should basically, he tells him, I want to shoot you so bad, my dick is hard. And Peretti's like, don't kill him. Don't do this. He's not worth it. Don't worry about it. So they take Nino into custody. And then the trial comes up. And, of course, they ask Nino if he's the head of the notorious mafia-style CMB. And he's like, no. And he points the finger at Kareem. Now, he's already stabbed dude. Dude put him on the game like, yo, Washington is a cop. He saved your ass then. You could have been shot then. And Nino, in turn, blames it all on fucking Kareem. And then Nino pleads to a lesser charge and gets, I think maximum was like, I think they said he was going to do like a year or two. And the DA is like, well, he gets some drugs off the street for a while. That's bullshit. I'm sorry. If you're the district attorney and I've brought you the drug lord of fucking Harlem and all you can get is a 3-year sentence and he may do a year, I think it was like 12 months or 24 months or 18 months, something like that. You don't think he was going to go right to the back to the block and start fucking hustling? Like, come on. And this is why black people don't trust cops and they don't trust the legal system, because even when we turn on our own people, which is viewed as snitching where we come from, and we basically hand feed you the motherfucker on a platter, you fuck us over and tell us he's only going to go away for X amount of time, which means he can be right back on the streets selling dope and kill me after this. Well, we think this is the ending, and of course it's not. The old man that tried to shoot Nino, tried to get at Nino earlier, is on the stairs and yells out as Nino's taking pictures and talking to the press. He's like, the American justice system is the greatest justice system in the world, and says, hi, Mom, to the TV cameras. The old man says, idolater, your soul is required in hell, pulls out like a Walther, some sort of a Walther pistol, like World War II era type of pistol, and shoots Nino in the chest from the stair, and Nino falls over and lands on the bottom floor, falls to his death. Shot him right in the heart, and that's how the film ends. And this is 100 minutes, this is an hour and a half, and it's just a great ride from beginning to end. There's an epilogue, and it basically states to the viewers that decisive action must be taken in order to stop real-life Nino Browns from taking over the ghettos and inner cities and things like that, which it didn't really do anything. In my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if drug trafficking went up after we all saw New Jack City. I know, personally, a lot of people I know who saw the film actually started selling drugs after this film came out. So it didn't do anything to quell it. It just only increased it. So here's some notes on the film. Again, it was directed by Mario Van Peebles, produced by Doug McHenry and George Jackson. George Jackson. How can I not say that? And that's my own last name. Anyway, the screenplay was written by Thomas Lee Wright, Barry Michael Cooper. Story by Thomas Lee Wright. Of course, Wesley Snipes, Ice-T, Chris Rock, Mario Van Peebles, Judd Nelson, and Bill Cobb, starring roles. Music by Michael Colombier. Francis Kinney was the cinematographer. It's edited by Stephen Kemper. The production company is the Jackson McHenry Company, Jack Mack Films, and it was distributed by Warner Brothers. The release date was March 17th of 1991. SFF, I'm not sure what that means. Just a second, I can tell you. Oh, okay, so it was at the Sundance Film Festival on that date. It premiered January of 91 at the Sundance Film Festival. It was released March 8th of 1991 in theaters across the United States. The official runtime is 100 minutes. The film was shot on an $8 million budget. It brought in $47.6 million at the box office. Again, Wesley Snipes as Nino Brown, an arrogant, smart drug kingpin who murders Scotty Appleton's mother. Ice-T is Scotty Appleton, a New York police detective who vows to bring down Nino Brown as retribution for his mother's death at Nino's hands. Wikipedia should not have put that. Scotty didn't find out that Nino killed his mother until they had that meeting on the roof. For the rest of the time, he's just trying to take down Nino Brown because he cares about his community and he's sick of seeing drugs peddled in his fucking community. The film is based upon an original story and screenplay written by Thomas Lee Wright. According to Karl Hart, who corresponded with Wright following Hart's criticism of New Jack City, the screenplay was originally written as The Godfather Part 3. This is very interesting. I did not know that. Featured a protagonist who sold heroin rather than cocaine. Wright later wrote, directed, and produced 8 Trey Gangster, The Making of a Crip, a documentary of gang life in South Central Los Angeles. You should check that out. The screenplay was co-written by Barry Michael Cooper, formerly an investigative reporter with The Village Voice. He also wrote the screenplays for dramatic films Above the Rim, another classic, which is features Tupac, Leon, who else? Dwayne Martin, Marlon Wayans. Above the Rim is a fantastic film. You guys should see that. And Sugar Hill, the Sugar Hill, also starred Wesley Snipes. Interestingly enough, it's one of the black films, being a black man, that I've never seen. So I'm actually going to check that out. Cooper's rewrite was adapted from his December 1987 Village Voice cover story entitled Kids Killing Kids, New Jack City Eats Its Young, about the drug war in Detroit. The account referred to the 20th anniversary of the 1967 riots in Detroit, and in its wake, the rise of crack cocaine gangs in the late 1980s, such as the Young Boys Incorporated and the Chambers Brothers. People's 1991 film is set in New York City and was filmed there between April 6th and June 6th of 1990. New Jack City received favorable reception by film critics for its cast, storyline, and soundtrack. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4, writing, Trufant once said it was impossible to make an anti-war movie because the war sequences would inevitably be exciting and get the audience involved on one side or the other. It's almost as difficult to make an anti-drug movie since the lifestyle and money of the drug dealers looks fun. Again, as I stated, a lot of people I knew started selling dope after this movie. At least until they're killed. This movie pulls off that tricky achievement. Nino, who looks at the dead body of Scarface and laughs, does not get the last laugh. Time Out London described the film as a superior example of what used to be called blaxploitation. The film initially premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on January 17, 1991, before being released nationally on March 8th of 1991. The film, produced with an estimated $8 million budget, grossed $7,039,622 during its opening weekend. It became the highest grossing independent film of 1991, grossing a total of $47,624,253 domestically. The film holds a 77% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 30 reviews. Cultural influence. The New Orleans-based rap label Cash Money Records is named after Cash Money Brothers gang. Told you. And I knew that without having to read this. Cash Money Records rapper Lil Wayne has a series of albums titled The Carter after the Carter Complex. Again, knew that without having to read this. Lil Wayne and Tiger has referred to themselves as Young Nino. Wrestler New Jack got his name from the movie. Comedian Gary Goldman refers to this movie in his Comedy Central special In This Economy when ranting against the now defunct Blockbuster video stores and their late fee policies. Deadline announced that Warner Brothers are rebooting the film with Malcolm Mays writing. I don't know how I feel about that. There is apparently a New Jack City sequel that was talked about. Bow Wow actually has an album titled New Jack City, and it's New Jack City 2 is the title of his album. It's supposed to be like, what if Nino and G Money didn't fuck up the situation? What if G Money lived and he and Nino continued to do business? If you listen to the album, there is no content that even sounds remotely like New Jack City. So it's like, did you just pick a title that black people would love? Because you know how much we love this movie. But New Jack City is a phenomenal fucking film. IMDb says a crime lord ascends to power and becomes a megalomaniac while a maverick police detective vows to stop him. On IMDb, they give it 6.7 out of 10 stars, and that's on 33,000 ratings. Let's see. Vanessa Williams as Keisha did a great job. Vanessa Williams played the role of Terry. No, I'm sorry. She played the Vivica Rock. In the movie Soul Food, which was later adapted into a television show, the sister that Vivica Fox plays in the movie, Vanessa Williams plays in the television show. Nick Ashford of Ashford and Simpson is Reverend Oates. Thalmus Rasula is the police commissioner. Apparently, he was on Star Trek. I did not know that. Yeah, Ice-T's first acting role. Let's see. Trivia. Story is largely based on a real-life Detroit gang known as the Chambers Brothers. Okay, Goofs. Pookie's time inside the Carter was extensively videotaped, and those tapes, which included G-Money giving the order to kill Pookie after his cover is blown, were all saved by the cops. Despite all that taped evidence that could be used to either convict G-Money and several others and or flip them as witnesses against Nino, the operation is declared a total failure and the tapes are never used. That is actually something I did think about the last time I watched it. I'm like, were they not recording the camera that was on Pookie's belt? This is interesting. Excuse me. Quotes, Nino to G Money. You fucked up big time. You're incapable of running this shit. Or sit your $5 ass down before I make change. Excuse me. Here's an interesting take on it. In one of the greatest patriarchal roles since Brando in The Godfather, Wesley Snipes astounds and overwhelms as the Godfather in this film, directed and co-starring Mario Van Peebles. Snipes, however, is where the strength of the film lies. His drug lord has no remorse, no heart, no soul. All he has is his power, and he wants more of it. The film has a quick pace. The cast is quite good, including Ice-T as a cop going on the inside to try and take down Snipes' drug lord. Judd Nelson is dark and sardonic as Ice-T's main opposite on the case. FAQs. This is interesting. How were Nino and his crew able to so easily take over the Carter? The answer is the Carter was already a slum in a neglected apartment building in Harlem that had long since become a haven for poverty-stricken families. Nino and G-Money see that the weakened social structure of the community inside the building is about to collapse. Add to that the gangster that they depose, who probably contributed to the breakdown of the community in the Carter for years or decades, and the CMB had the perfect opportunity to march in and take over. The fact that it was in a situation like this, it's in the ghetto, basically, in this area of Harlem, and that you had so many families in there where people were probably on welfare. It's a project housing building. It doesn't look like other projects that you would think of. Excuse me, but at this point, when the Carter was built, whenever it was built, it was probably a huge, big deal in New York. Like, if you look at it, it has like a courtyard that had like a little, at some point there was like a functioning fountain and stuff like that. So it was probably a really elegant place to live. As things continue, you have to remember, a lot of families, like Brooklyn was not a drug haven. The Bronx, places, they weren't havens for drugs and black people. You know, black people generally stayed in Harlem, from my understanding. What happened was, there was this great migration of the well-to-do families that moved to the suburbs of New York, outside of the city, outside of Manhattan and things like that, where they went to Long Island and stuff like that in the Five Towns. Black people are left there, and at that point, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's black people, we ruined it. No, we didn't. When you have a bunch of black people living in the area, and the landlords who own this place, they didn't give a shit. They weren't going to fix the building or do any renovations or add any amenities or anything like that, because they didn't care about black people. That's how the Carter fell on hard times. That's why you have welfare families and things like that. You do have people in there who are already smoking crack, so for them it's a win-win. I can walk right down, to the first floor and get rock and smoke it right in my apartment. It's a win-win for them. So that's how it's easy to take over. Another question says, why couldn't the NYPD's narcotics squad move in on the CMB in the Carter building? Nino and his brother G-Money and their crew had, after their violent takeover, the Carter had very steadily and perhaps silently, looking to tone down the violence they used to seize the building, built their crack-based empire over a 7-year period. So the film starts out in 1986, and then no, that's not 7. It starts in 1986, and I think it's like It's New Year's 91 where they have this really big celebration. So that it's either 90 or 91. So no, it's not 7 years. It's like 4 or 5 years at best. They built their power and influence, used the building's remaining residents as hostages, and recruited an army of people to help them produce and distribute their product, and also serve as a security force for the property. The police also ran into a few age-old tactics used by gangsters. They effectively hide their illegal activities and draw little attention to the methods they use to enforce them. Nino has also hired several high-powered lawyers to ensure that he or anyone in his chain of command will not be indicted. It should be for any wrongdoing. Nino has also very likely bribed city officials to ignore the crime empire he commands. If you're making $1 million a week, yeah, you can feather some palms. It's only after several years of violence and notable increase in crack dealing and addiction in the community that the NYPD is able to build a strong enough case to have a special detail assigned to investigate and bust the CMB. That includes a suspended cop and a burnt-out cop, Scotty and Peretti. They begin an operation that takes them undercover to expose Nino as a criminal overlord. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. Again, it was not 7 years. But it was like anywhere from like 4 or 5 years. But yeah, my synopsis of it: the Carter was an elegant building when it was built. When white families left, Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Harlem, Yonkers, and stuff like that, and they went out to Long Island and the Five Towns and upstate New York, and some of them to Connecticut. Nobody gave a shit about these buildings because there were a bunch of black and Latin people living there, and they generally just did not give a fuck. So the buildings fell on hard times, and it made it easy for them to be taken over. That's all that is. It has nothing to do with them, like, I don't know. It's just bullshit the way they try to explain it that way. That's not what happened. I'm sorry. But, I don't know. That's my assessment of New Jack City. Again, it's one of my favorite films of all time. If you've never seen it, you can catch it. Let's see. I had to buy it from iTunes. Apple TV, YouTube, Vudu, Amazon Prime Video. It's nowhere for free. You have to pay everywhere that it is. It was on Netflix for a while, but you know how they rotate stuff in. So, that's all I got for you guys today for this episode of Introspective. Stay tuned for other stuff in the future. I'm going to delve into some more films, and we're going to get back into some more albums as well. Whenever Drake actually decides to put out Certified Lover Boy, we're going to take a listen of that, and we're going to sit with the album and live with it for a while. And I expect to have an introspective episode done for that album, probably by Thanksgiving holiday, depending on when it comes out, because I want to sit and live with the album for a while. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Again, tell your friends and family, patreon.com/allournonsense. My name is Derek. As always, believe in yourself first and foremost. You guys have a great day.